Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about how to export our object from an external software to Substance Painter so that we can have texture sets. Then we're going to talk about how to export our object with naming convention. So we can utilize the Substance feature of matching by name using a suffix to help us not get any bleeding in our normal map bake or any other map baking. Then I'm going to present you guys with a character which has a decent UV compared to the last two characters we have seen and what you guys should try to achieve for. We are also going to talk about shading in your low poly, which will describe how your normal map will look like or some of your other maps. If you recall, shading in this character and the last robot we did had some issues which got solved after we baked down our normal map. But those shading are going to be prominent in some cases, sometimes in our engine. So it's a good idea to not have any of those shading issues. So we're going to talk about how to fix that. In the last, we're going to talk about how to add emissive material inside Substance Painter, which I forgot to add in the last few chapters. So here it is. So let's get started. So I have my character loaded inside Maya, and every object is split according to the UVs we have. So this UV group is split into an object, this one split into an object, this one split into an object. But right now everything has the same material, which is Lambert 1. That's the default material Maya assigns to every object. If you guys are using another software rather than Maya, every 3D package like Blender and 3ds Max has a pretty simple material system. If you don't know how it works, just a simple Google will help you guys out. So now if I export this out as a FBX or OBJ, what Substance will do is import that as a simple texture set, and our UVs in Substance will be like this. Everything overlapping on top of each other, which we don't want. So what we have to do is take this object, which has a whole UV group of its own. You can split it more. You can obviously have these guys a different texture set and these guys have different texture set for some reason. If you want to do that, it's possible, but that gives you a hassle of exporting from Substance and combining all of your maps together in a 3D package. So to be on a safe side and do things properly, every UV group like this one will have a same material and a texture set. So to assign a material in Maya, you have to just click here, hold right click, go to assign new material, pick a Lambert and name it. Naming is not gonna matter as much as long as it's divided by different materials, because you can always rename these guys inside Substance Painter. So let's divide our skull and leg too. So now our leg, torso and skull have a different material. So now if we import this object inside Substance, Substance will divide these into a different texture set. To export it out, let's go to File, Export Selection, where you can export an object, make sure your materials are on. But for exchanging your low poly from different software, especially for games, try to use FBX as much as you can. So let's go to FBX and make sure our smoothing group is on, smooth mesh is on, and these guys should be fine. You can turn off everything if you have it in your scene. I don't, but I turn it off anyway. Just name it anything you want, export it out, and you're done. So next thing which we want to look at is how to export things with naming convention. So we can use matching feature in Substance Painter through a suffix. So why do we use it? With baking. So if you guys are not familiar with it, baking usually works with a cage. So to explain it, if you don't give your software a specific cage, what your software will do, your baking software, what it will do is take your object, make a duplicate of your object, then it's basically going to select all of the words And if I go to normal, it's in normal, and it's going to inflate your object up. So something like this. And what it will do, it will take the original word, let's say this one, from your low poly, the original low poly, and it will take the same word from your cage that it has created or you have given it, and it will bake down everything that comes in middle and give us a normal map or a different kind of bake, faking that information which comes in the between of those two words. Cages also go inside, so it's going to also cover the indent part a bit as well. But this kind of things give you an issue which we usually call bleeding. So what happens, let's say these objects are close together, right? So this inflate and this inflate will also cover an area of this object, and this object will cover an area of this object, which is not supposed to belong in this UV. And it will capture down the information from that object, leading with a result of bleeding. We have experienced bleeding in the robot part. Some of the few slight areas have it a little bit. But for a AAA quality kind of character or any character in general, you want to minimize bleeding as much as possible. So what we used to do in the old days, I guess, or not too old days, we used to do a process called exploding. So how it works is, let me undo that. So let's say we don't want any information from this guy baked into this guy and any information baked from this guy into this guy. So what was the method is you physically, let me just split it and split this guy. Let's freeze and reset our coordinates. So what we used to do is physically move in this guy's maybe like 100 units to the right, this guy 200 units to the right, something like that, and we are going to move this guy 100 units to the left, and so on. You're going to do the same thing for your high poly, and so when your software will create a cage, it will never be able to get any other information apart from the object. It used to be a tedious process and a bit annoying sometimes, but Substance has fixed it, and many other software has too, is you can use a naming convention to do the exact same thing. So how it works is, let's undo this guy. You're gonna go to your object and under outliner, let me open up my outliner. Outliner in other software can have a different name like file manager or something, but this basically has all the objects that we have in our scene and we can rename it. So what we have to do now is just use this, name it head underscore low, because this is our low poly. For this guy, let's name it something like jaw 1 underscore low. This one will be torso low, and this one should be jaw 2 underscore low. These are case sensitive, so when you're doing that in ZBrush, make sure you follow the same upper and lower cases. Why we are using underscore low and underscore high? Reason being is, if we go back to Substance Painter and bake mesh maps, and if I scroll down to the matching which we used on the first week, and this is the feature that we're going to use, and that's what we are making these names for. So if I make it by mesh names, that's going to utilize the names. So by default, the high poly mesh suffix is underscore high, all low, and low poly mesh suffix is underscore low. You can change it as you please, but these are the default Substance Painter suffix. And the benefit of having that on your own project is you can have a constant ground throughout all the project you do. So we're going to use it. If you want your own, you can name it. So that's why we have everything in Maya, which will be named and torso underscore low and jaw. Obviously, you will have to divide those meshes differently. You will have to split it out, but all of those, even if you split it out, are going to have a same material ID. So when you export that for Substance Painter, everything will be combined together as a texture set, but they're going to be split according to their names, so you can bake it out without any bleedings. So let's say we named everything, like this is jacket underscore low, shoulder underscore low, shoulder part 1 underscore low. Do remember these are case sensitive. So next thing which you have to do is go to ZBrush and in the same equivalent part, name it the same thing but underscore high. So let's say this one is gonna be shoulder underscore high. So I was actually planning to give it out to you guys, the whole character, to name it yourself, both in low poly and high poly, and bake it down. But I felt it's a bit overkill and a bit stupid idea because it has so many objects and you guys are not familiar with this character as much as I am. So just so that you guys can have a bit of experience with naming convention baking, I'm gonna provide you guys with a file which is gonna be ZBrush and Maya file. I will prepare it so both of those have names according to the object split, and all you guys have to do is export it out, then bake it in Substance Painter to just get a gist of it, like how naming convention actually works. It's not a necessary thing, but if you do, the more you bake, the more you will understand baking and you will develop a bit of instinct about what's gonna work and what's gonna cause you trouble. But if you guys don't want to do it, it's totally fine. I have provided the maps for this character so you can directly use that to texture it out. So let's say once you have everything named in, as I mentioned, I'm going to prepare a file for you guys so you can open it up and see how I divided it and how I named it. But let's say we are done naming it. So to export it out, let's do that in Maya first. So in Maya, all you have to do is same thing as the last time. Select all of your objects that will be split objects as well and export it out as a FBX. That's it. In ZBrush, we can do the same thing. Let's open ZBrush. We have to go to Z plugin, FBX export import once you have everything named. Let's go to Z plugin. That will be everything that is visible. Make sure nothing else is visible. We're going to export it out as bin. Substance does not like ASCII. And FBX 2014 is the safe file version for Substance Painter. If you go up, I don't think in 4 or 7 I can go higher than 14, but if you go up, Substance usually messes up. We're going to use smooth normals. And after that, all you have to do is export it out. FBX file takes a bit longer to export, but they are lighter than objects, so they load a bit faster inside Substance Painter. Apart from exporting with names, let's discuss about exporting so we can bake down an ID map from our high-res sculpt. So before that, again, if you want to bake it down with names, you have to make sure under match by mesh names is on. If you want to bake AO with mesh names, you have to go to AO. And under self-occlusion, give it only same mesh name. But for the ID, there are quite few different ways that people do that, and some of those are complex, some of those are simpler. I'm gonna cover the easiest and most accessible one you guys might have. So if I press Shift F to go to my polygon mode, you see this polygon, this polygroup is pink. This polygroup is greenish or bluish. Same as this guy. If I open this, it has different polygroup. If I press Ctrl W, it assigns the same polygroup. So let's say we want to bake down this small material with different IDs. So let me just export these guys, not export, move these guys up. And all I have to do is go to merge down, always okay. Merge down one more time and one more time. So if I isolate this guy, you see it has a different polygroup and every polygroup has a different color. So that color will be our ID map. If I press Ctrl W, it's going to have a single color map. If you want to have it different one, just go to your polygroup and go to auto groups. So auto groups usually takes a long time to work, but if you merge different subtools, they're obviously going to give you different color polygrouped. So to use that as an ID option, you have to go to your Z plugins, and under FBX, if you open options, export polygroups as mats, enable that and export it out. This is going to take longer time, but it's the easiest and fastest way to get an ID from ZBrush. To utilize it in Substance Painter, you have to go to Bake Mesh Maps, and under ID, your color source will be your polygroups, and that's it. You bake it down and all of those color will be your ID map.